To stay competitive, you really just have to keep doubling down on your own story because it's the only thing that's unique to you.
Wow, I'm going to put that quote on the wall.
This is why I'm a CEO now, because instead of waiting for these traditional spaces to change, I'm going to create the space.
Fintech is Femme. What is the story behind it?
Look, what's wrong with wanting to be like Jay-Z and Beyonce? Nothing.
I'm ecstatic.
After the election, my ticket sales spiked after. And it's because women were so ready to mobilize. They were so ready
Pissed off.
They were pissed off. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they were just pissed off. And they were so excited to go into a room filled with women in fintech and venture capital and just talk about how we can work together and organize.
Building a community over 50,000 fintech leaders is super impressive.
Just because someone else decided to weaponize something like DEI or to make women feel small or to try to take away our rights, like, fuck off. I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to make sure that I am building on top of the work that the women like Gloria Steinem and the women that came before us already did.
Welcome to episode 8 of the First Time CEO podcast. Today, my guest is Nicole Casperson. She's the founder and CEO of Fintech Femme, author of Fintech Feminists, 4-time award-winning journalist and global speaker, and professor inspiring the next generation of fintech innovators. Nicole built a community of over 50,000 fintech leaders, driving conversations that shape a more inclusive and equitable financial future. We've discussed the power of founder-led storytelling and personal branding in early-stage growth, how to build and monetize a highly engaged niche community, creating systemic change through gender equity and inclusive leadership, adopting an abundance mindset and confidently valuing your work as a CEO, scaling impact with a lean, mission-driven team and strategic partnerships, and lessons and challenges as a first-time CEO. And with that said, I invite you to join us. Hello. This is the First Time CEO podcast, and I'm your host, Victoria. I am the CEO and co-founder of Olympia. We provide entrepreneurs with AI teams. If you would like to streamline your operations, I will leave the link in the show notes, and you can book one-on-one demo with me. And I'm excited about today's episode because I'm here with Nicole Casperson. Hi, Nicole. How are you doing?
Hi, Victoria. I am doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining. I'm ecstatic. So the first question is about the inspiration behind Fintech Femme. What is the story behind it?
Well, it's a good thing we have all the time in the world, so I can tell you all of my full story. No, but really, Fintech Femme is inspired by my career as a journalist. So I really grew up in my career in B2B media. I've been a finance reporter and editor at a number of different trade publications covering housing and mortgages, auto finance, wealth management, and investments, you name it. And over the years, I really just grew frustrated and tired by the way that traditional media failed to properly cover women's stories. And by that, I mean, they would cover women. However, our stories would be shelved for the women's section or some sort of special interest section. And I thought that women's stories were incredibly valuable for daily consumption or everyday news. So I quit my 9-to-5 and I started my own media company and publication, called it Fintech Femme. Started with a newsletter where I was covering those untold stories of these incredible women and diverse leaders building in fintech. And it grew to 50,000 subscribers in its first year. I started a podcast called Humans of Fintech. After a couple years of podcasting, I eventually was approached by my publisher for a book deal and wrote Fintech Feminists last year. And now I also have a private membership community. I host events and summits in New York and San Francisco and speak all over the world. And it's been an incredible journey.
How did the journey from award-winning journalist to founding a powerhouse media company shaped you as the first-time CEO?
Well, it's one of those things where you don't really expect that you're going to be a first time CEO, right? I never thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I think a lot of us entrepreneurs are not never grew up thinking we'd be running our own businesses and being CEOs, and sometimes that's actually the best part, right? At the end of the day, I was working in an industry that I'm incredibly passionate about. I've always wanted to be a journalist and storyteller, and so I'm very lucky to have found my footing in my career doing what I love. But I had no idea I was going to also fall in love with fintech and the finance and tech industries. But when the more I kept uncovering these layers of all these incredible women that are building these high tech, valuable companies that are really solving our economy's most pressing issues, I was just hooked. I couldn't get away from it. The more I learned about these women's stories, the more interested I became. And so I knew that I could create something that could enable a ripple effect of more women seeing entrepreneurship as a worthwhile opportunity for growth and personal growth and business growth and professional growth, and as a way to build wealth for themselves. So I would say the beauty of going from a journalist who never thought she was going to be a CEO one day to now being a CEO of my own company is that I really didn't expect to go down this journey. I just found a problem that I was obsessed with solving. I'm still obsessed with solving it today. And when you have that level of passion and conviction for something and you're willing to be disciplined enough with the consistency to fight for it and build for it, then that's what the journey is and is really about. So I think almost like a bit of being an outsider, right? And seeing that is what enables the success.
Building a community over 50,000 fintech leaders is super impressive.
Thank you.
What strategies did you use to do it, to cultivate such an engaged network?
Yeah, I would say when you're building, and a lot of this is actually a lot of personal branding strategy. So oftentimes I'm really focused on founder market fit, right? The way that I've been able to do that, and obviously I had to learn just through trial and error, but is by sharing my story, right? So when I go out there and say, hey, you know what, I decided to build this thing, to build Fintech as Femme because of a need I saw and because of a pain point I even was feeling as a woman who loves consuming business content and news and finance content. Why is there not something created specifically for me? That's kind of how I was able to find my footing there. And so when I started creating content that resonated with me, it started opening up the doors for more women who saw themselves in me and saw themselves resonated in the content. And that creates a ripple effect. That creates word of mouth. It creates people sharing my newsletter, posting about it on social. A lot of this organic growth is just word of mouth. But I think that when you're consistent, right? I mean, I've been writing a newsletter consistently for the last 4 years, every Tuesday and Thursday, and that does not change. There's been like a year where I took maybe a week off for the holidays, but I don't typically do that. And that's not to say that because I don't think anyone should be obsessed with hustle culture. It's not because of that, but it's more so when you show up in a way that is valuable and consistent twice a week in people's inboxes, they start to really also show up for you, right? It's like me every week saying, hi, I'm going to do this for you. Here's the value. And they open it up every week too. And then it creates this like communication between us and this connectivity where they're constantly hearing from me. And it's this direct line of communication. And I think that's really what's enabled the growth of 50,000. I also don't only live digitally. So I think that's something that a lot of, if you wanted to call me a content creator, right, you could. A lot of creators are spending too much time obsessing over like follower count on their digital presence when businesses and really humans or business professionals really want that in-person connectivity. And so that's how I've been able to grow, is that I actually live both in the real world and with a digital presence. And so creating that flywheel effect where when someone meets me in person and they see that my voice is just like the voice they read in a newsletter, that makes them feel like I'm their friend, right? I'm like their friend helping them through work. And so those are the type of things that you want to create to, to have that kind of growth that I have. I think that's been like the secret sauce.
Yeah, and that's part of the big complex marketing system, I guess, that you've developed over time. So let's talk marketing and how, as a new CEO, you approach marketing to get early traction, and what are your main marketing channels today?
Well, what's cool is that I mean, I'm just naturally a content marketer. I never thought of myself as a marketer ever, but that's really essentially what. And for more global or wider industry trends, I mean, storytelling is everything. I teach sometimes at universities, or I'll go to, I just was at Harvard speaking at an event and to their business school students. And if there's like one talent or skill that I would ask them to develop, it is your storytelling ability, because that's really what marketing is, right? And it's really evolved into a much more organic experience because there's so much content out there. So from a marketing standpoint, now that I'm a CEO, I think of it a lot more in terms of the strategy and numbers. But when I was starting, I never thought of it that way. I was just creating stories where I interviewed people and I wrote about the value that they provided and directly fed it to my audience, right? I interview a massive president or CEO of a fintech company and sharing their wisdom for others to follow, or like my book where I wrote and profiled 40 different female entrepreneurs and business leaders in fintech so that other people could see their success stories and replicate it for themselves and have a blueprint to succeed. So I fundamentally believe that when you think about creating real value for your audience and create that kind of connectivity, that's the best marketing strategy you can have. And a lot of that can also be if you're willing to be vulnerable enough to build in public, which is very hard. And not everyone wants to do that, right? People want to, a lot of founders or CEOs just want to like hide behind the scenes and never put their face out there. Like, it's not about their face, it's about the brand. Sure, you could do that, but it's just not true anymore. People don't follow a brand, they follow people, right? They connect with people, they don't connect with a logo. So that's, and so that's what I would encourage folks to do. Is your best marketing strategy is going to be you. Your founder-led marketing strategy is going to be you putting yourself out there, talking publicly about why you're doing what you're doing, really creating a narrative and a story around it to showcase why you are uniquely fit to solve that problem. And that actually is what's going to help you not only connect and gain clients, but also help raise money if that's something that you're doing, right? Investors are not really investing that much in a product. They're investing in a person, especially in those early stages. So that's really how I've been able to do it and think about the marketing element of it. But now it's, I'd say the marketing challenges are, continuing that trajectory when you're battling so much competition and noise, right? There's so many events, so many things going on, right? So to be able to stay competitive, you really just have to keep doubling down on your own story because it's the only thing that's unique to you.
Wow, I'm gonna put that quote on the wall. Because your story is unique to you. That just hit me hard just now. I hear about it more and more, and maybe my last 3 interviews, every founder was like, personal branding,
Oh my gosh.
who you are, come up front, speak up, show up consistently. And I guess that's a trend, and that's what makes this human connection real between all of us as humans, because the more technologies progress, the more we crave for that human connections, and that's changed since
I mean,
COVID, I think.
yeah, and if a lot of the folks on the show have been telling you that, and that's clearly the trend, I guess, and maybe something I could share that's a little bit different, right, is you want to really think about creating for your audience that it's okay if it's niche, right? In fact, you want it to be. I think people get really too obsessed with some big large number on your following on LinkedIn or Instagram or your whatever. But I've stayed consistently in this 50,000 subscriber range because I want to go deeper with this audience. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's actually where a lot more of the value lies, is not necessarily having some big follower count just because that's not necessarily going to be represent conversion. But I think when you're first starting out as a founder and CEO, a lot of the times people just make you chase virality. But that's really not how you get growth or clients or the money or revenue that you're looking for. You have to double down on the niche that you're after, and not be too afraid of going even deeper with the audience and the niche that you have, because I think we're too obsessed with
Numbers.
Yeah, and massive growth.
Yeah, I think quality over quantity in this case.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your book,
Yes.
Fintech Feminists, and I've held it in my hands in New York City.
Oh, good.
And I've seen it, and I went through it. That was with a person that connected us. She told me, "This is your girl. Like, you gotta talk to her." So it has resonated with many. It's obviously very popular. What motivated you to write it, and how does it tie into your broader mission?
Yeah, I mean, I think the book was a very natural evolution of what I've done. I've written whatever the math is on 4 years times times 2 newsletters a week, and 52 weeks in a year, that number. Hundreds and hundreds of newsletters later, I finally was approached by a publisher, my publisher Wiley, and really my book editor just sent me a DM, and she was like, "Nicole, every single time I read your newsletter, I smile. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And this is like August 2023, I think, is the first time she messaged me. I actually missed a couple of her DMs, so I'm glad she kept bothering me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize a book editor was in my DMs. And I finally responded to her and said, of course, I've always thought about writing a book. I just didn't think I would do it so soon. And honestly, I hopped on a call with her. She, asked me to put a little proposal together of my idea, which was really just taking the interviews that I've held on to from my podcast over the years. And I ultimately decided to really share more of a blueprint, a guide, through the power of storytelling and a number of different and diverse women's stories. I knew that if I condensed everything into a 360-page book, that meant so many others could read it and see themselves in the number of different stories that you'll capture in the book. And when you see those stories, there's 40 of them. Someone's going to resonate with you, right? Like, there's women building in to help with student loan debt and healthcare and climate change, or making sure that we're building companies that are mindful of financial health, right? As much as our mental wellness, retirement, you name it, like all of these big, scary problems, investing and wealth management, that these big problems that we have in our economy and our industry, these women are building to make it more equitable so that our economy can flourish more. There's simply nothing more powerful to me than that, and nothing more inspiring. So that for me was really the big motivating factor, was if I can create this thing, this this book that's really a moment in time of all of the interviews I've had and what I've learned from these women, then that means I can create more of them, right? Ultimately, my goal is like mint more female founders in fintech, mint more women wanting to be. And if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, because this life is not for the faint of heart, then go be an operator in fintech, go be a marketer, go be an engineer, go be a CTO, whatever, a CFO. There's so many incredible women out there that are doing such great work, that there's no reason we shouldn't be more represented and our stories told in these spaces. In fact, we build businesses that are more profitable, more resilient. We're more scrappy with money because we get less money and we use it more effectively. These are all tools that everyone should want to know how to use when you're building a company. So that's a huge inspiration. Was I knew I could create this swell of others that would want to follow in the footsteps of the incredible women I profiled. And there's so many more too. 40 was just all I could fit in 90,000 words. there's a lot more.
Yeah, so you mentioned gender equity. How do you contribute to the inclusive fintech space?
Yeah, well, so I'll tell you, for me, the inspiration behind Fintech is Femme and how my book, Fintech Feminists, really just ties into the whole ecosystem. I, for one, am pretty tired of going to like a fintech event or conference and someone wanting me to speak or moderate a panel about how do we increase more gender diversity in fintech, or how do we get more funding to female founders. It's like, honestly, the answers to those are quite easy. Just put money into women founders' hands, write the check, hire them because they're excellent and incredible and good at what they do, if not the best at what they do, as operators, right? Hire them as CEOs and leaders because women consistently show characteristics of stronger leadership. There's what I did with the book was I put it all together with all of the data points that consistently showcase year over year why women are always a statistical no-brainer in terms of investment ROI, in terms of their leadership qualities. So when you see all that, it's very like, oh, so then what do I need to talk about the importance of gender diversity when the data's been there, is there and all along, right? And if you have to get to know the data, then sure, like go get to know the data. The problem is that we still have this data and yet we have this gender imbalance, which means it only exists because of biases, right? Because people choose not to believe in the data and instead just do whatever they want. I think the way to combat that is to create new systems and patterns. So I don't need to retrofit myself to fit this traditional mold. In fact, when I go and I build my own table, right? Like instead of vying for a seat at the man table, I'm just going to go build my own table and I'm going to bring the best women I know to come run it and sit at my table and let them build their own tables like connected to my table and create an entirely different cycle where we're hiring each other, getting deal flow to each other, putting each other on stages and interviewing each other, not because we're women, but because we are the best. We're the most qualified for the job. We own more homes. We're more college educated. I said earlier, we run more profitable businesses. That's what the content and community is about. And when you just listen to women as the experts that they are, you'll be blown away by what you get to learn. But we got to stop asking women to talk about being women. It's just weird. It's it's a little strange. Yeah, like I'm just like no, or we could go on stage and talk about our expertise and normalize our expertise as being just as valuable, if not than anyone else's. And in fact, it's more valuable because our perspectives have been pushed to the side for so long. So you're going to have a massive data and innovation imbalance in any industry that doesn't properly represent the leadership and perspectives and innovation of 50% of the global population.
Yeah, and for how long are we gonna continue talking about it?
Yeah.
It's like
I mean,
I've been organizing Web3 conferences, what, 2 years ago? And it's still the same. How do we contribute to gender equity? Like, stop
yeah,
talking. Let's do it. Like, do
exactly.
something. Let's put some
Exactly.
action into. Let's stop talking about it. It's like,
Right, right. Well, it's like, and it, to be fair, yes, the talking about it is okay, but I know, but to you, the point you're making is right. It's really the action, right? So let's put some action behind this, because sometimes these like panels that are like, and I actually just turned one down. Like someone was trying to get me to speak at a fintech conference where the panel's like, women in fintech, how to push the needle on diversity, and I'm just like, please, can you? And it's like pejorative at this point. It really is. We all know the answer. You what? I don't need to go to another. I don't need to fly across the country to speak on a panel, which, mind you, they don't want to pay me for, of course, so that I can talk about a thing that you really don't want to pay for, which is getting more women in the room. It's ridiculous. So you know what I'm going to do instead? This is why I'm a CEO now, because instead of waiting for these traditional spaces to change, I'm going to create the space. I'm going to create it. It's going to be even better. It's going to feel better. It's going to look better. It's going to be more valuable. It's going to make even more money. And and then because it's women, everyone's going to be dressed better. Everyone's going to smell better. it's Everyone's going to be more polite. It's going to be the whole thing's great. In fact, for me in Fintech is Femme, my audience is actually 85% women. So it's not 100%, and that 15% men, they love my events. They are
why
thrilled
not?
to be there.
You're in a flower garden.
Yeah, they love it. They're like, yeah, it smells good. Like they're like, oh, beautiful women. I like this, right? Like it's
I'm going.
yeah, I know. They're like beautiful, smart, smells good. Oh my god, and I get to learn from them too. Holy shit! Like what better way to get to know business and to see business in a different way? I really want, with Fintech is Femme and the events and everything that I'm doing and the book, we need to see that doing business differently and seeing it from a bunch of different perspectives is actually how more of us succeed. Because following one playbook, which has very clearly shown us, and by that I kind of mean like your classic like tech bro-y playbook where, hustle culture is emphasized and you don't take care of yourself and you just hire a bunch of young bros, like, and everyone smells and doesn't shower because they're too busy sleeping in cots under their desks. That whole thing is like, what? What woman is doing that? We're definitely not doing that. We're going to take care of ourselves and create profitable businesses and do it well and not be toxic. And wouldn't you like to follow that blueprint? Wouldn't you like that trajectory? It just, and so that's why I want to make sure more people are seeing the women do this, because we're doing it so well. And so if traditional media and traditional venture capital doesn't see that or invest in that, then whatever. There's a lot of people in this world. I will go find the ones that see the value in women and work with them.
Yeah, and in terms of toxic masculinity, I remembered this moment vividly. I attended a startup conference also a few years, like when we just started Olympia, and there was a round of men surrounding the organizer, the well, he also a big time entrepreneur, so they really have so much respect for him. So it was like only man. And then I entered the room and the organizer noticed me and invited me to join the conversation. And the the atmosphere was so tense. All this like 20 pair of eyes just, like,
Started over
simultaneously
you?
like looked at me and shut their mouth is, and I was like, well, hello. Like, I'm so and so, and oh, I know you. How are you doing? And and there was just like silence, and it's so uncomfortable. And then in like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, like awkward silence, and then someone continued a conversation with the organizer, and it's like, oh, AI is so expensive nowadays, which it was at the beginning, especially 2 years ago. So I don't know how to grow my business, and then I chipped in, and I'm like, we developed a new system that archives the conversation so we can save money on tokens. Again, awkward silence, and the organizer was like, here we go, you have something to learn here too from a woman. So anyway, it was beyond awkward. I had to leave like in 5 minutes because no one would start a dialogue with me.
Yeah, I've been there. That story.
I'm sure you've been there multiple times.
Yeah, I think we all have, and it's funny, even and over the years, because I've been more vocal, and I have a lot more credibility, and I've done a lot of things with my platform, and obviously still growing every day, but it still happens to me sometimes. It's more rare now, but it does.
Some progress.
Yes, there's some progress, but it does, and I think the best thing to do in those moments, which our natural inclination is going to be to retreat, right? And I've done that plenty. And it depends. I can be at a dinner where majority of the room are men, and there's like 3 or 4 women in there. Honestly, I was just at one, and of course, the men are great, they're fine, but I can sometimes tell the minute I kind of say what I do, Fintech is Femme, and how it has this emphasis on women, it's like they're like eyes glaze over, and they're all of a sudden deciding that they don't have to listen anymore because I'm talking about something that's not for them. And actually, that's really what needs to change. And even if sometimes someone will see my badge at a conference and be like, "Oh, Fintech is Femme," like, "Oh, I wish I was invited to your summit or your event," and I'm like, "Yeah, you are. I'm sorry. Was there anything that said here like you weren't?" And so I'm like, "You are invited, and you should come, and you should learn, because." Who wants to learn in a cycle of people that are all thinking and doing the same? You wouldn't do that with anything. Like, you wouldn't do that. You would never want to do that with your business. You need a diverse set of perspectives to tell you where your blind spots are, to tell you about things that maybe you didn't even know to think about. I do it all the time. Like, I'm always attending new events and going to new things and meeting new people for that purpose and reason. So to think, oh, this is a woman's thing, or a woman speaking, sounds like all she's going to do is do women's things. That is so weird. That is like such a weird thing. You really, really should. I just don't know how to even grasp that mentality. It's like thinking that women are like, I've heard some women tell me like investors only really see the value in like funding a female if they're creating like a product that's for women. What? Like, that's so weird. We don't even think about that for men, and it's so weird, especially because when you think about the data gap, right? Like the data and the innovation gap that exists because industries, frankly, across the board, have done such a poor job of actually catering their products and services specifically to women, to 50% of the population, then that actually means you have a massive opportunity to build in any section, especially the not female centered parts, right? Like, I think that, you don't have to build an investing app that maybe is just for women. You can build one for everyone, but making sure that, but when it's built by, a woman who thinks of that experience, then it at least attracts that audience, and then attracts everyone else. Like, at the end of the day, when you build for women, you're building for everyone. Like, that is like the chain. It's interchangeable nearly.
Yeah, I agree. I have so much more to say, but then it's gonna be like 5 hours.
You got some time.
I got some time. So you started obviously alone. You started with newsletter, events, and then there was a book. Are you still a solopreneur, or you have a team?
No, I have a team. I guess I technically never really started alone. So the backstory there is, I was a reporter at a publication called Investment News, writing about fintech for the financial advisory and wealth management sector. And actually an agency had reached out wanting, and with the idea of, hey, like you should, write your own newsletter and have your own podcast. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, this is silly and ridiculous. Like I would never do that. I remember literally like laughing at the idea, like, what? Nah, I'm never going to leave my job for this. But then I started kind of digging in. I started digging into kind of the trends that I was seeing, from the growth of the creator economy to the way that traditional media was really like, even to this day, the traditional media platforms they're trying to figure out how I do what I do, right? Like they're the ones who are kind of like, how do you get that level of engagement with an audience and get them to read your newsletter? I have a 51% open rate for the last 4 years.
Wow,
that's insane, right? Yeah, that's like well above industry average. My audience, they buy tickets to my events, they show up to my stuff, they support me unequivocally because I've been honest with them about everything, and I've built this thing with them and for them. And so I technically never did this alone. I had an agency that I started Fintech is Femme under. And then after I started with the first 2 years. So I had like an operational team, but I really knew that if I wanted Fintech is Femme to be the company that I kind of realized it could, that I would have to do this on my own. And by that, I mean, I was able to leave. I left the agency, and I just turned around and I made Fintech is Femme a proper LLC. I was like, you know what, we're doing this. I started a company. I actually turned around and asked. So my co-founder is also my life partner. We are getting married at the end of the year.
Yay!
Thank you. He was tired of corporate America and just all of that, the toxicity of working in corporate America and not really being able to build any real wealth for yourself. So we were like, you know what? Let's be entrepreneurs. We'll be like the first in our families to do this. We'll be the first in our families to build real wealth and create like a legacy together. And we've just really been so passionate about that and that idea. And, being what's wrong with being, what's wrong with wanting to be like Jay-Z and Beyonce? Nothing's wrong with wanting to be like Jay-Z. Everyone wants to be like
everyone wants to be like Jay-Z.
Yeah, obviously.
When does he come into the picture? When did he come into the picture? When did he join you?
Okay, so I often joke that he proposed to me in October 2023. And then by like November 2023, I proposed back to him, asking him to be my co-founder. Like a month after he proposed, I was like, I left the agency and I was like, let's do Fintech is Femme full time, like you and me, because he was going to start his own like consulting agency as well, because he's a performance coach. And I said, no, like, let's do this together. He's so creative. He has the operational background. He's worked in marketing forever.
What is his role?
Yeah, I mean, he's co-founder. So I'm founder and CEO. He is my co-founder, but also because he helped me build the idea of Fintech is Femme, even from the beginning. And even when I was with an agency, and has been with me every step of the way through it all. And he likes his title to be co-founder and creative director. I tell him all the time that he is COO. So you got a promotion like forever ago, right? Like you are. But he really acts more as chief operating officer. He leads sales. He leads operations. Last year was just us two for the first year of us being independent. This year, in 2025, year 2 of building Fintech is Femme independently, we decided to, finally bring on a chief of staff. So we have a chief of staff now who is someone that can really act on the behalf of both me and Anton, my co-founder. And then we also have someone that helps us with our marketing as well. Her name is Kaylin. She's amazing. She's also helping as our community manager, so wearing multiple hats because we're a small team. So really just us, team of 4, is really the core. And then I outsource to some of the other creatives and, folks that I've worked with for years. Like I've worked with the same photographer and videographer for all of our events for years. They're dear friends. I'm lucky to live in New York City, so I have no shortage of talent around me. I outsource like my podcast production I have 2 podcasts now. So, I and that's how we've been able to run it. But for the most part, it is me, CEO, really like leading in terms of I write and create the product. I am the one to make sure that the way that we sell, right, and tell the story of the product is consistent and intact. And it's also really on me to build the community, right, to always be out there. Always, CEOs are always just kind of like the figurehead. Sounds bad, but that really is what you are. You are the face of the brand. You're the one that needs to be out there advocating because you create your own momentum in this world. And so that's really my job, is to create the momentum. And then Anton picks up that momentum and turns it into money, basically.
Talking about money, how do you monetize your business?
Yes. How do I make money? Okay. So honestly, I tell people like, I am a media company. So I would really just think of it just like how does Fast Company or Inc. or anyone else make money? Very, very similar. I don't really emphasize the subscription model though for my newsletter. I actually thought about it for some time, but honestly, the traditional media companies are having a hard time with that anyway. But I always wanted my newsletter to be free. So if you are a paid subscriber to my newsletter, it's actually more of just like a buy me a coffee model, right? There's just people that are down to donate and support because I've been doing this for so long and for free. So, however, though, the newsletter, free for customers and consumers. You will always be able to sign up for my newsletter for free. That is the value I will provide twice a week, every week, forever. The rest of my life. And forever. Anyways, at least that's the intention. But what I do is I do monetize the newsletter through ads. I monetize the newsletter through paid, deep dives or content. So, sometimes, the event, I was just at an event in Las Vegas. That organization basically sponsored me to go attend and cover the event. I also monetize my podcast. So like I said, I have 2 podcasts, and oftentimes partners want to be able to, create content and narrative around a certain campaign or product or brand that they're working on. And so they'll
advertising, right? Advertising.
Yeah. So advertising through the newsletter, podcast, and also obviously event sponsorships. But what I'd say makes Fintech is Femme really different is the fact that, I have a very engaged and specific audience. 56,000 email lists is what I've got for my newsletter that's highly engaged. They're 85% women. They're 60% founder, CEO, decision maker. The rest of that audience then, funnels down into investors, VCs, and then bank and operators. So the fact, though, that I have an 85% female, high-level, high-profile audience in the finance and tech space is simply not heard of. No one else has that audience at their fingertips like I do, and they're very lucrative, right? They trust me. They want to know what products they should use in the fintech space as they're building their companies. They want to know, what companies they should go work for if they're an operator and looking for a job. And so what I do is I actually monetize really well by packaging all of the different elements of my platform, from my newsletter to my podcast to my event series, and creating full-on campaigns and activations and narratives for the partners that I work with. So I can quite literally, give me the ICP of what my partner is looking for, and then I can go in and really use my newsletter as a sourcing tool to enable me to create content and community around the target ICP that my client is after. And because I'm so obsessed with the value of the content, it never comes across as ridiculously salesy. And in fact, I like to make sure that let's just not even, why are we pretending like that's not what's happening right now? Like, let's be real. When we're doing brand partnerships and doing deals, the whole point is to try to get a specific subset of an audience to want to be, lead generation, to want to use the product of my partner. Yeah, that's the whole point. If you partner with Fintech is Femme, that means you are really showcasing that you have a very specific set of values. You're showing that that the women in fintech market is incredibly valuable and delivers consistent ROI. And when you do that and you get in front of my audience, I've never had a partner be upset about the delivery, about the ROI. They're always very happy after. And I know that because I know I can trust my audience to show up and be there. And so that's really how I've been able to monetize and grow, is that work, is creating a flywheel effect where brand partners know they can come to me because they know my audience is going to engage and be connected. And then they know that I'm going to make sure that we create something valuable for everyone involved so that everyone feels special and happy and gets all the results that they want, right? My audience gets great content and community and engagement and events. My brand partners and sponsors and clients, they get the lead gen that they're looking for. Everyone's happy.
Let's scratch the surface of the political situation in the US now. How does it influence the fintech industry? But just briefly, what's happening, and is it for better or for worse for fintech industry?
So many things. I have no problems talking about politics. In fact, I actually think it's our lack of talking about politics, especially in business media, that it makes us sound really tone deaf when we don't, especially given how intense the political atmosphere is. From a fintech perspective, there's a lot of deregulation going on right now that gets people excited. I don't really fully understand that or why. Honestly, I've never really fully could wrap my head around the fact how we could be jumping up and down in joy when something like the CFPB or, protections that have been in place to protect consumers and our industry, by the way, because of what has happened historically in the patterns of the past, like the 2008 financial crisis. I don't understand how we could be so excited to see the dismantling of an organization that was created because of the corporate greed and, frankly, predatory and terrible practices of our financial services industry when we were allowed to go rogue. Almost everyone that was remotely involved or was a big leader during that time would tell you that a lot of the reasons that the financial crisis in 2008 happened was because of the lack of regulation or oversight, in addition to a lack of diversity and representation of women in the highest ranks. Of course, after 2008, what ended up happening is regulation had to step in to clean up the mess. And who were a lot of those leaders? Women, right? You had women like Elizabeth Warren step in, and right in Congress, and then you have, all of these women stepping in and having to just completely be the ones to say, hey, we have to do things differently. And the reality is that we saw the economy flourish and grow after that. We had the longest expansion in history following that time. And so fintech companies, I think, and banks don't typically like regulation because they think it stifles innovation or it stops them and it makes them nervous and scared to be able to move forward with testing different products and services because it's financial services. It's so compliance heavy and it has to be. I think if you're thinking that way, maybe look in the mirror. What are you doing that makes you so afraid of breaking a rule that you're going to get in trouble? Like, maybe you should create something where you're thinking ahead enough where, hey, you know what? I am building a fintech company. I'm building in financial services. I can't just not follow the regulations that are laid out for me. Frankly, I'm sure there's plenty of people that could battle me on that. I don't build a fintech company, so I'm sure it's very difficult to deal with the regulations. However, I see plenty of fintech companies that have no problems. So I guess I'm just confused why we would be so excited to see the possibility of another crisis happen. Anyway, but that's one side of it. I would say obviously there's a lot of the DEI nonsense. And by nonsense, I mean the way that the current administration has just completely weaponized the term DEI by calling it DEI all the time when they should really just say what they're dismantling, right? They're dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a lot of argument that diversity, equity, inclusion programs to begin with weren't ever designed to truly be that successful. You could probably say that's true. I would say, for the most part, though, that I just don't care what the administration does in that realm. I do care because we have to pay attention and we have to be awake and pay attention. However, it's not going to change my actions for how I show up and support and ensure that my community is taken care of, and ensure that women and diverse leaders are still have places to gather, still have places to grow, still have places to build wealth, still have places to lead, to be shown in media. So that's kind of what I would say about that.
Does it
Obvious,
fire up, even fire
yeah.
up your intention to do that?
Yes.
All
No, that's it. Yeah, Victoria, that's a great way to put it. In fact, I was hosting a summit, my Fintech is Femme Leadership Summit in San Francisco, a week after the elections here in the US. And, I thought it was going to go the other way, but it didn't. And surprisingly, after the election, my ticket sales spiked after. And it's because women were so ready to mobilize. They were so ready
pissed off.
They were pissed off. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they were just pissed off. And they were so excited to go into a room filled with women in fintech and venture capital and just talk about how we can work together and organize. This election, just as someone who's young and in her 30s, I really thought about some of the older women that I am inspired by, and how, especially the women in like their 80s, like think about like a Gloria Steinem, right? Who, got, like, knock on wood, may not see the day that a woman becomes president despite working her whole life towards that kind of goal. And yeah, no, and it's heartbreaking when you think of that. So then, but the best antidote to anxiety is action, right? The best thing to do with that anger and that hurt and that pissed off is to, and we spend a lot of time complaining, I think, just in general, which, get that out of you. Go complain at your dinner table with your girlfriends and get it out of you, and then turn around and put the work in, right? Put the work in to do something about it. Just do something about it, right? Like, what are you going to do about it if you're that mad about what's going on? It's just completely fired me up and my community and the women in my space to double down on each other, and that's what it should do. And the more that we do that, and the more that we're able to create those new cycles and systems. And I know on another scale, I'm obviously speaking really just in my microscope of my Fintech is Femme universe right now. There are much larger atrocities happening in the geopolitical sphere.
Absolutely.
That I'm, speaking from so much privilege to be able to talk in the way that I am right now. But there is so much more going out there that is far worse now. But I do think that what we do with our actions every day to just make the piece of the world that we're a part of be better every single day is how we enable change. And so, yeah, it's complex and messy, but get fired up, because
there is no way around it.
yeah, there's just no way around it. This is it. This is the world. And there's parts of it that just fucking suck, but just because someone else decided that, to weaponize something like DEI or to make women feel small or to try to take away our rights, like, fuck off. I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to make sure that I am building on top of the work that the women like Gloria Steinem and the women that came before us already did. To drop the legacies of the work they put in would be, frankly, the most dishonorable thing we could do as women, in my opinion. So I'm gonna
during my last visit in New York, I met my friend that recently moved from Mexico City. She's also in Web3. That's what we were talking about. She's like, what are we gonna do? How can we contribute? How can we contribute to changes and everything? And that's exactly what I said, that we can't get there to the top. We don't have access to that power, but what we can is contribute to the communities here around us and build what exactly is you are doing. Build the communities around us and help those around us, and put in the action.
Yeah. I mean, that's really where the power is, though, too. And it doesn't feel that way or seem that way, but there's power in numbers, and there's also power in our communities. And so, they're going to do everything, that higher power that you're talking about, right? The powers that be, i.e., it's like Trump and his co-president Elon Musk, they're going to do everything they can to make us feel like there's nothing we can do, right? That's the whole point. Yes, the whole point is to make us feel powerless. They got to do that. You know why? Because they know that we're powerful. So they have to make that's like a part of the whole, it's a part of their whole scam, right? Is like,
yeah, so the more women, the more people are gonna build the strong and engaged communities. That's what they're afraid of.
yeah, exactly. And that's how you dismantle power. And we've seen it. And that's not just a theory. That is proven over history. So we just gotta, that's what you gotta do. Exactly. I tell people, the women in my audience that are like, I'm so down right now, this news, and I'm like, me too, girl. I gotta read the news, and then it's like, ugh, and then I gotta read my like New York Times newsletter in the morning and just be like, oh god, oh my god, and then and then I just kind of, I mean, if you're privileged enough like we are, where you can put that aside and then go keep building, then you better go keep building. You better go use that privilege to not just your advantage, but then to others, and start building new places for the people that do not resonate with what's going on, to have a place for them, and to grow our numbers. So just keep building. That's what we can do.
As a new CEO, what lessons did you learn so far?
Yeah, I would say, so the first thing is, when you first start being a CEO, you really think you have to do everything yourself. You don't. That was a big learning lesson for me. I also really learned over the last year the importance of ensuring that you have abundance mentality and not peasant mentality. If you really start downplaying yourself, and if you at the end of the day, you set your floor, right? You set the bar for yourself. You decide what is the absolute lowest I'm willing to do work for. What's the lowest number? The minute you start, that's the number you work with, and that's how people are going to perceive you. So make sure that number is one you're proud of, right? Make sure you're, price yourself well. There's nothing wrong with saying no to an opportunity because they don't want to pay you. Because every time that you say yes to an opportunity that is free, you're closing the door to an opportunity where you could be making more money. So always see your value, because when you're first starting, especially as a CEO, everyone's going to tell you that there is no value in you and that you should be just working and hustling and moving and doing things for free. Yeah, don't do that. You are so valuable, and the value that you provide costs money and should be paid for. And if anything, just work on communicating that value. That's a huge one, right? Knowing how to communicate the value and showing the people that you work with and audiences and clients like, hey, you know what? I hold the keys to a very special kingdom. And if you would like access to this kingdom, which then, by the way, you're going to pay me X, which is going to be, 2 times the ROI that you would get from hiring someone, right? You spend $50K on me for a marketing campaign or for a content marketing campaign. That's half a salary. That's way better deal than what you're going to get, from hiring. You'd have to hire a bunch of people for the work that I'm going to do at a more cost-effective rate. So just showing people what you're capable of, how there's so much more value in it than they would even think about, and being able to communicate that is huge. So, but you can't get there unless you do steps 1 and 2 that I said, which is make sure that you're not doing this alone. Have a good co-founder, have good mentors, have a list of advisors, whatever that is. If you can't pay people to work for you, people are really, really happy to help new founders and CEOs. People, especially like people that have been successful already and are already, wealthy and successful and have exits and IPOs, they love giving back. So find those people and use them for advice and wisdom. And then as you're doing that, making sure that you're using that community to feel the abundance that you have around you so that you don't have the peasant mentality. And then using that abundance to price yourself right and respect yourself. Those were some of the hard lessons I had to learn. And I especially for women founders and CEOs, I really want them to be able to follow those steps and create the wealth and businesses that they so deserve. I'm like, I have learned a lot of other hard lessons, I'm sure, along the way. But those are the first 3 steps I would work on.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. Yeah. What is happening exciting and what events or
Yeah.
initiatives in the near future in Fintech is Femme?
Yeah, so for 2025, Fintech is Femme is really, really focused on our growth really this year. We had so much incredible traction last year that frankly we barely even know what to do with it, that which is a great problem to have. So this year we decided to really grow our event series. We're expanding our Fintech is Femme Leadership Summit, which is happening on April 23rd in New York City at the Time Center in New York, which is a part of the New York Times building. And we are, growing our summit. Last year we had about 300, a little over 300 guests, and this year we're growing to more of a 500 person summit. And so really excited to expand on that and continue creating spaces and summits and community and education really, right, for my audience to continue to find ways to grow and develop and build companies in the fintech space so that our economy can flourish. I'm hosting one also in San Francisco, so just continuing to grow the Fintech is Femme blueprint in my secondary markets like San Francisco, and also growing more internationally. I'm actually going to Istanbul next week for my first keynote in Turkey at a bank, so that's exciting. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I'll sign a couple books out there, and I want to make sure that Fintech is Femme is starting to have more presence internationally. So that's also a big goal of mine this year. But to start, we'll focus on our summits. And I also just started my private membership community, which is called the Academy of Fintech. I started that at the end of last year. We have about 100 members. And yeah, just kind of keep growing that community as well. So it's exciting. Those are some of my big focuses. I also am podcasting a lot more because, like I said, I have 2 podcasts now. So
Do you organize on the summit? So you have like weekly meetups?
I mean, I for my private membership community, we do have some, we have like weekly meetups that are virtual for everyone, so it's a little easier. I also do my best to host at least one private membership community event a month. If not, I just tie it in with something I'm doing with a partner, or one of our brand partners or sponsors. Mostly, I do things pretty organically, but for the most part, I stick to the 2 summits, one in April, one in October, and then I will sprinkle around more community events. Something else that I'm working on a lot more this year are like curated dinner series or curated kind of lead gen opportunities for my partners that not only create those lead gen opportunities for my partners and sponsors, but also create more connectivity and community around certain segments of my audience. So, if I wanted to create more community around women CFOs, right? So that all of those female CFOs out there don't feel like they're just alone at their offices, and create spaces for them to come together and talk and exchange notes and, be a networking community. So I'm excited about all of that. It's a lot, plenty on the plate. So, but it's all very exciting.
It sounds incredible. So I'm gonna leave all the links, all the resources that Nicole mentioned in the show notes. Links to the summits, to the book, to the community, everything. What resources did you find useful for yourself as a first-time CEO?
Oh, from a technical standpoint, I think things like having like an otter AI, right? Like I leverage, honestly, I use artificial intelligence a lot. I know some people, especially women, can be reluctant towards using AI. I'm a tech optimist, so I just use technology and hope for the best. But things as some simple things like that to help with your productivity. So, I've been using Otter AI forever to help me with my interviews, my notes, my meetings, to help me just like synthesize everything that I'm doing. I would say, making sure that you're using as a writer, but even someone who wants to make sure that because all I'm doing is communications all the time, from social media to my newsletter to emails, using applications like Grammarly have been very, very helpful. and ensuring that I'm kind of keeping like the tone and voice that I always want, and developing that with a little assistance. If you end up being a podcaster, we're on Riverside. I think LinkedIn's a great tool. I would really, really leverage the power of LinkedIn to grow that personal brand. Frankly, as a business professional, there's not really any other platform you should be on. No one really cares about X anymore. And yeah, so LinkedIn is the place to be. So use that as a tool to grow your thought leadership, your digital presence. I think things like, slow productivity have been very helpful. I also love one by Stacey Abrams and Laura Hodgson called Level Up. That is like a great story of how they built their fintech company. I actually kind of tell that story in my book as well. But yeah, I would say one of the best things you could do, especially for any of the female CEOs and founders out there, is to make sure that you're just diversifying where you're getting your leadership information, and make sure, like, yes, there's amazing books out there. Make sure you're reading books by women. Make sure you're reading newsletters and following on LinkedIn, right? Incredible female founders, so that you can just make sure that you have content that's going to ensure that they are sharing different perspectives, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for being with me today and for sharing all this knowledge and inspiration, which you are just glowing. I can feel the energy through the screen,
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here with me today. And you guys, like I mentioned, I will share all the resources Nicole shared today in the show notes. And also, I will chip in with AI. I use AI tool that we developed ourselves daily for not only content, but also a faster execution. So I invite you to check it out. Check out Olympia. We sell AI teams for entrepreneurs. If you want to boost your productivity and streamline your operations, the link is down there as well. And you can also book a one-on-one demo call with me. I also want to remind you that in 50 episodes, this is gonna be a book as well. And I'm very, very, very much excited about it. And soon it's gonna be on Leanpub. And you're gonna be able to track my progress on the book and to pre-order it. And I'm gonna share it on the podcast, on the newsletter. So make sure you follow me on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on Substack. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got inspired by Nicole, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!